the Warriors have officially robbed the NBA. It was a long and strenuous offseason trying to find a home for high flyer Johnathan Kuminga, ultimately concluding in a return to the Bay Area, which through 8 games so far in the season has looked like an absolute match made in heaven, both for Johnathan Kuminga and his camp and the Warriors organization. And so today I want to take a look at some of the trade talks that were happening for guys like Trey Murphy, Derrick White, even former Warrior Andrew Wiggins, and compare their play so far to start the season to prove just exactly why Johnathan Kuminga staying with Golden State has been an absolutely incredible decision for both sides, and why it gives me a lot of confidence and should be very encouraging to Dub Nation for the rest of the season. And before we will hop into all that, I want to remind you guys to hit that subscribe button. It's the easiest way for you guys to support us here on the channel, and it's also the easiest way for you guys to never miss out on content. Go down below, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell to turn on notifications to never miss out on a video. So 8 games through the season, a big win last night against Phoenix, and Kuminga, even though he had probably his worst game of the season, wasn't as aggressive, maybe in matchups, not in the best situation set by Steve Kerr. Felt like him and Steph Curry's minutes were contrasting a little bit too much. But I tell you what, very impressive start to the season for Johnathan Kuminga. He's done everything that we've asked of him. He's rebounding better. He's more locked in defensively. His IQ seems to have been improving. Decision-making has gone through the roof. And he's also shooting it better across the board. Field goal percentage, three-point percentage, free throw percentage, something that is very important for Johnathan Kuminga, a guy who's going to be aggressive, getting to the rim, all have shot up. Very impressed with his play so far throughout the season. And so first things first, I want to look at Johnathan Kuminga's numbers to start the year. Around 30 minutes per game. You'd like to see him around that 30 to 35 minute nightly. Been a couple of nights where he hasn't played down the stretch because the Warriors have been up big. But man, the stats look great. Last night, I believe, only had 9 points. Before that, he was averaging close to 18. After last night's performance, it pushes him down to 16. But 16 points per game, above 7 rebounds a game, 3 assists per game, showing the decision-making has very much improved. Turning the ball over, probably a little higher clip than you'd want him to, around 2.5. If he could get that to the mid-1s, you'd probably feel a little bit better. But overall, a guy who's had many turnover issues throughout his career, that's at a spot where you can be okay with it. You can be slightly content knowing that, especially because he's getting a lot of shots up, he's doing a pretty good job creating possessions and keeping possessions for his team. Field goal percentage is around 54. That's exactly where you want it for a guy like this. It would be incredibly impressive if he could get it up to the 60 mark, because he has so many shots at the rim as far as dunks, layups, floaters, high percentage shots for a guy like Kuminga. But then outside the arc as well, the 3-point percentage has gone up significantly, and he's looked incredibly impressive from out there, shooting around 30% of his shots from the 3-point line. Almost all of those threes coming from kick-out opportunities, swings in transition. Not a whole lot of Johnathan Kuminga just doing step backs and things like that. That's not really his game, but decision-making has been incredibly better. You haven't seen as many of the pull-up middies or the post fadeaways that we've seen in previous seasons that have been poor decisions from Kuminga. He's focusing on getting to the rim, shooting kick-out threes when the opportunity presents himself, and I've been really impressed with him so far to start the season. A guy who has a major season this year. It's either going to be him getting in more trade talks once January hits, or a guy who's going to be a long-term franchise icon for Golden State. I hope it's the latter. Let's look at a couple of players that he was in trade talks with throughout the season. We did several videos here on the channel, as did other channels, as did the NBA media in general, right? Everything was pointing towards Johnathan Kuminga being traded for this team, potentially taking the qualifying offer. And I'd say the biggest guy that was in trade talks for a guy like Johnathan Kuminga, most of the packages that actually included a guy like Trey Murphy, was Johnathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, Trayce Jackson-Davis, a pick, like all these incredibly hefty deals for the Warriors, and it is paying off very well for the Warriors right now, because if you would have given up a lot of that, this is the product you would have gotten in return. A guy in Trey Murphy who's scoring about 15 points a game, playing more minutes than Kuminga, 5 more per game. Rebounds and assists are pretty similar to where Kuminga's numbers are at. Assists are actually the exact same. Rebounds a little bit lower than Kuminga, points a little bit lower. And then the shooting clips, lower too. Obviously, the turnovers is much better for Trey. Not even averaging a turnover a game. Not on the ball quite as much as Kuminga has been. But he is a guy where you expect him to be a heavy decision maker for this offense. The Pelicans have had a rough start to the year in general, so I understand that Trey's in a position where he's not going to be in the best team, probably not have a whole lot of confidence, but also that should put him in a position to score the basketball a lot, right? Be in a heavy attack mode, but around 60% of his shots are threes, so he's not really getting to the basket like a guy like Kuminga does. but the field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, decent, but not amazing. Shooting 50% on corner threes, which is impressive for a guy like him, but overall, I understand that the archetype of these guys aren't the same, right? Trey Murphy's more of your outside 3-and-D type guy, not as much of a slasher as Kuminga is, but he's shown scoring threads in the past. That's why we were so interested in adding him to the team, right? Get rid of Kuminga, a guy who's ball dominant, a guy who wants the ball in his hands all the time. Maybe a little bit of a locker room issue, right? And then bring in Trey Murphy, a mesh guy, a guy who can sit in the corner on the wing, play perfect alongside Steph Curry, and knock down threes. Well, guess what? We have that in Buddy Hield and Moses Moody and Pods every once in a while. Sometimes if Gee can come in and hit shots, right? That position's sort of filled already. Kuminga adds way more to this team than Trey Murphy ever would. And I'll be honest, I was an advocate. I'm a big fan of Trey Murphy. I thought he would fit really well on this team. But after seeing 8 games of Kuminga in 2025, man, I've been impressed with him. 2025, I mean the 2025 season. Obviously, we saw the end of, or the beginning of the year, technically in 2025. But as far as this season goes for Kuminga, I've been really impressed through 8 games, and everything that he's shown me so far proves that he's a guy that deserves to be on this team above a guy like Trey Murphy. And another guy that was in massive trade talks was a guy like Derrick White, a guy who expect him to be an all-star this year if he's playing at that level, a former USA national team guy, right? And his numbers have been rough to start the season. He's being asked to do a lot more than he has in previous years. No Jason Tatum, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday. They bring in a guy like Anthony Simons, but Jaylen Brown's putting a lot of shots up as well. So Derrick's not shooting at the level that we know Derrick White to be, right? 14 points per game, a couple of assists and rebounds per game around the 4 mark, right? Blocks, steals. Defensively, he's doing his thing. But the percentages are low for a guy like Derrick White who wants to be such a consistent scorer for this team, especially as a second option. But he just has not been there to start the year. I still think Derrick White would fit really well with the Warriors, but I don't think it would be worth it to get him in a package involving Kuminga, because I think Kuminga's meshing really well with this team right now as a third scoring option. And although Derrick White would mesh really well as well, he was a guy that was in a lot of trade talks, a lot of opportunities to be added to this Golden State Warriors team. And now you're seeing, man, I'm kind of happy that we stuck with Kuminga. Obviously, we're only 8 games into the season, right? A lot can change. A lot can be adjusted. Guys will start playing better. We've seen some star players that have been fantastic. I'm sure their numbers will dip. And a lot of guys that haven't played that well, like a Derrick White, who I'm sure their numbers will skyrocket some point soon. But when you look at this from just this small sample size, you're happy to see that Kuminga is a part of this organization still. Next is a guy in Andrew Wiggins. And Andrew Wiggins, obviously the former Warrior, similar player to Kuminga in the sense that they'll shoot the 3 ball. Wiggins does it more, around 35% of his shots are threes than Kuminga, who's right around under 30. But still very aggressive in attacking basketball from both of these guys. They want to get to the rim. They want to get to that midi, right? And so you're seeing it from a guy like Andrew Wiggins, who's in a pretty good spot right now in Miami. Obviously, that coaching staff, that culture has been said for a long time to be one of the best in the league. And he's in a pretty good position, and he's playing decently. Him and Kuminga's numbers are very, very similar, around 16 points per game. The rebounds and assist numbers are a little bit better for Johnathan Kuminga than they are for Andrew Wiggins. Field goal percentages and 3-point percentages are above for Johnathan Kuminga as they are for Andrew Wiggins. And yeah, a guy that you thought, man, Johnathan Kuminga feels like he could play that Andrew Wiggins role at some point, especially in 2022. Andrew Wiggins, second best player on the team, an all-star starter, really solid player. That's who we need Johnathan Kuminga to be, right? That's the guy that we need to come in on a nightly basis, be in attack mode. Andrew Wiggins had the youth, unlike a lot of the other guys on that 2022 roster, and that's what we're going to need from Kuminga, a guy who's younger, who can come in, be a spark plug off the bench in those moments where he does come off the bench. But he's played so well that he's proven to Steve Kerr and the rest of the organization, hey, you can start me. In the past, the inconsistencies didn't allow us to have confidence in putting him in the starting unit, but now he's playing so well, Kerr's spoken out and said Johnathan Kuminga will be a starter moving forward, and that's incredibly encouraging to see. Lastly, a guy like Bradley Beal, lots of talks where, hey, instead of focusing on Kuminga or Wiggins or Derrick White or some of these younger stars, let's bring in a veteran scoring presence who is incredibly impressive throughout his career at scoring the basketball. Now, Bradley Beal hasn't played all the games this year. He hasn't been super healthy. Against the Warriors, he didn't even play in that one game. Also, fun fact here, look at how nice these numbers are. Like, obviously, they're that way because he hasn't played that many games or taken that many shots, but every number's almost even. 25% on corner threes, 1,000 of his threes are assisted, 40% of his, I don't know, just something about looking at that is just satisfying. But yeah, you look at Bradley Beal, a guy everyone's like, hey, bring a guy like him in who you can be more consistent, focusing on, scoring the basketball off the bench, right? Well, we saw it in Phoenix. It didn't really work out for Bradley Beal. We're seeing it in LA, right? It's not meshing as well as you'd like to. Again, I know he hasn't played that many games. The injuries are a bit of an issue. He's playing alongside Harden and Kawhi. Maybe that'll get figured out down the road. But I just like what Mike Dunleavy did. I like that he focused on a guy like Kuminga and said, you're a young stud. You've had some issues in the past, right? Let's find a way to come to a conclusion. Kuminga, talk to Steph, talk to Dre, talk to Jimmy. Guys who have been through these contract negotiations before understand it's just the business side of things. Let's get back to winning basketball. And that's what the Golden State Warriors are doing right now at 5-3. Another big game against Sacramento tonight. No Steph Curry. Jimmy Butler may be out with a back injury. Al Horford should be playing to hopefully combat Sabonis well down in the post, but going to be a tough one. The Kings are 2-5, but they've played everybody close. Lost to the Thunder a couple of days ago by 6. Lost to the Nuggets, I think 2 nights ago by 5, right? So they're in good games against good teams, and I expect it to be a close one tonight. Going to need a big moment from Pods. Going to need Moody. Kuminga, here's a big opportunity for you to score 30 against a Kings team that really, really, really wanted you on their roster. Moment for you to show up in Sacramento should be a fun one. I've been Houston Bo. You guys have been the fans. Thank you so much for tuning in. Man, I'm happy to have Kuminga on this team. We'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, go Dubs. Peace.